Is the Ontario real estate market finally shifting or slowing down? Because from what we've seen in just the past 7 days alone, it seems like the real estate market has essentially shifted overnight. And in this video, we're going to talk about what is going on and why is this happening? Are we going to see prices drop on houses? Are we potentially on the forefront of this much awaited real estate correction or real estate market crash that people have been talking about for years and years? And ultimately, how can you navigate this as a buyer or seller in the market that we are expected to head into in the weeks to come? So what's currently going on in the real estate market? Well, a lot of properties aren't selling anymore like they used to, or they're not selling at all. We're seeing beautiful homes come to the market being priced in order to initiate a bidding war. They have a presentation date set, but then come presentation time, there are no offers submitted. And that forces this listing to then be canceled, relisted at a lower price, or what we're steadily seeing is these listings being taken down, getting put back up for around asking price with no offer presentation date set, as well as sellers being more willing to accept conditional offers or offers with the typical and traditional contingencies of a home inspection or financing for 5 business days. And there are many factors impacting this, but the two big ones that we're going to talk about in this video is supply and demand, as well as this announced increased interest rates and the announcement that they are going to continue increasing interest rates for at least 6 times throughout the course of the entirety of the year. For the last 1.5 to 2 years, we've had record low numbers of supply and inventory. There's essentially not enough houses to be found anywhere, whether it's not enough new development properties being built, resale homes just not coming into the market as much as they traditionally used to be. Obviously, factors like kids moving back in with their parents deciding that, hey, we're going to keep this bigger home for the next couple years instead of selling it now, which resulted in this pent-up demand, especially with the amount of immigration that we have coming into Canada. And overall, just such low supply, such high demand, 10, 20, 15 offers, and obviously prices selling week over week higher than what the previous listing sold for. But overnight, that feels like that has drastically changed. Now, whether sellers think that we're finally at the height of the market and that now is finally the time to cash out and move somewhere else, or people are just uneasy about what's going on overseas with inflation, with rising crude oil costs, all these different factors. But here are the stats. In January, for the city of Barrie, we had 127 new listings come onto the market for the entire month of January. In February, that number is up to 340. In the last 24 hours, in the second week of March, we've had 30 new listings hit the market. The amount of inventory has essentially tripled in the last few weeks. And from what we know, the demand has come down a little bit because of this announcement of the increased interest rate. So the fact that inventory has tripled and the demand has more or less come down, we're assuming that is the perfect recipe to be able to move into finally a balanced market. Whereas for the last 1.5 years, buyers only had 1 to 2 options that they could realistically offer on or view every couple of days. They're now seeing 4 to 5 new listings every single day that match their criteria, that are suitable for their interests and suitable homes to be living in. So now sellers have a whole lot more competition and buyers have a whole lot more to choose from. So we are seeing properties being selected and being more deliberately visited, as opposed to a couple weeks ago where every listing that hit onto the market, you had 10 buyers lining up at the door. And although this increased interest rate has a very minimal impact on the actual purchasing power of a consumer for real estate, it's what the media is doing with it that is really impacting buyers. We're seeing a lot of buyers just take a breath, take a step back from the market and say, hey, I just want to see what the prices do in the next couple of weeks, so I'm going to hold off from offering and viewing the homes just in case I see prices start to go down. So all this pent-up demand has now been met by a huge influx of supply, which is why we're seeing offer dates fall through, properties being now listed closer to asking price with no offer presentation, and essentially seeming an overnight market shift into a more or less balanced market. Obviously, it's going to depend on the neighborhood, the area, and the properties themselves, finishes, and different things like that. But that leads us on to the next point. Will prices drop? And my answer to this is I don't think so, but that is assuming that a lot of factors kind of stay relatively similar as to where they are now. Now, what do I mean by this? Assuming that gas doesn't keep going up and inflation doesn't hit double-digit numbers month over month, and assuming that what's happening overseas on the east side doesn't affect the overall economy of the west side, for worse, obviously, then I don't think prices are going to drop. Now, the reason for that is because sellers have built up such an incredible amount of equity in the last 2 years. They don't need to sell. They want to sell. There's only going to be a small percentage of sellers that are going to be put in a position where they have to sell and are going to be willing to accept a lower price than what similar properties on the street sold for. If you're a seller and you know your neighbor down the street sold for $1 million, why would you sell for anything less? Especially if you don't need to, you want to. You're gonna put your home on the market and you're willing to wait, because ultimately it's not costing you that much money to just continue living in the home that you've been living in for the past 5-10 years. And although we've seen a great amount of supply come to the market, there's still a lot of demand out there. So it's very likely that there will be, and there still will be, a few buyers willing to pay the high asking price that these sellers might be setting going forward. So on that basis, I don't think prices are going to drop, because again, if you put yourself in the seller's shoes, your home doubled in value in the last 2 years. Why would you sell? Why would you take for lower than what this other neighbor on the street sold for, multiple offers? Even if you do have to wait for 90 to 120 days, eventually you will find a buyer that is willing to pay the price that you want for your property, and then you can move on to the next one. But assuming that factors do change drastically, yes, I will now finally come to the agreement that we could potentially be on the forefront of a very large market correction or market crash. Now, I know I'm saying that a little lightly, and I should be saying that a little heavier, but it's true. It seems like through COVID, real estate has shot through every parameter that we expected from it. A lot of people thought it was going to drop by 20% once the COVID pandemic hit, but now more than ever, there are so many factors that makes it seem like the real estate market is, and I don't feel proud saying this, essentially a house of cards. And if just one of those cards topples over, you know, like look at the transportation costs. A lot of buyers don't want to now drive up to Toronto, from Toronto to Barrie, just to go view properties, because it's becoming so expensive just to drive. And that people that are now returning to work who bought in Barrie or Orillia are realizing that, hey, maybe this increased transportation cost is not something I factored in for, and we now, like, I think we want to move back to the city, so we're gonna list our property and move back for it. There's an abundance of videos being made on the real estate crash. These videos have been made for the last 2 years, as far as I can remember. Every single week there's a new video. Hey, the real estate crash here, the real estate crash is here. It might happen, it might not. I'm not going to talk too much about it in this video, because I really think that no one really knows exactly when it's going to happen. But I want to say that what I'm going to say next is not financial advice. Yes, I'm a licensed real estate agent. Yes, I was featured in Top Agent Magazine 2022, as well as one of our listings that we sold was featured in Haven Magazine. I'm a real estate agent practicing every single day. But my advice on it is this. Personally, I don't think like we're there just yet. I think that the government has a lot riding on the fact that the real estate prices and the entire real estate market kind of stays where it is, if not continues growing. A crash would, you know, hurt the government a lot. And from what they've been doing, just printing the money to be able to sustain it, I think they can continue doing that. But that being said, personally, I am stacking away some cash. I am getting rid of debts, minimizing expenses, cutting costs that are unnecessary or really just unneeded in my life, and overall just putting that cash away, not in a savings account, but in an accessible line of credit or liquid assets that if anything does happen, I can actually move that money around and purchase something, or have enough savings to be able to live through at least, 6 to 12 months. Say, the economy does crash, but you need to buy food, but food prices are through the roof or whatever it might be. So don't take that as financial advice, but that's just what I'm doing. I'm stacking away some cash, but not liquidating real estate assets just yet. So how can you navigate this new market that we're potentially heading into as a buyer or a seller? Well, as a seller, you want to make sure that you have the right agents working for you. Shameless plug there, but it's more important. I mean, you can't just, you can post your listing if you do need to sell, or you're in a position where maybe your house is a liability and you think that the home that you purchased is too big, the mortgage payment is too big on a monthly basis, you want to downsize, your house is appreciated and you can't do so. You do want to make sure that you're getting the most amount of money for your property. So if we're seeing no more multiple offers, you want to make sure that your property is presented in the best possible light, and that the marketing on it is solid, and that you are getting the highest amount for your property, so that the next one down the street doesn't sell for more, or you could have gotten $10,000 to $15,000 more just by working with the right realtors. And as a buyer, you need to stay hyper active on exactly what's going on in the market. You now have 4 to 5 new listings every single day coming onto your plate that are potentials from you to choose from. And I think staying hyper focused on what you want, as well as looking for the opportunity in the real estate that you're looking for, is going to be very, very beneficial. Because say you have 5 properties now that all match your criteria, all have different finishes, but you like the kitchen of one property, then you can potentially go for that property and look at the possible value that you can add, as opposed to going for the very nicely finished property that is likely to attract more demand, might even get 2 or 3 offers on it, but you can potentially secure this property that's a little dated, just needs a little bit of work for a much better price, put in some sweat equity, and there your property is already worth more than what you purchased it for. So overall, to sum with this video, yes, we are seeing signs of the real estate market shifting into a more balanced market. I don't think the buyer's market is in our sights just yet, but you never know. I mean, if we have 400 or 500 new listings hit the market and the demand does not increase from what it is now and the interest rates just continue to go up, we might be in a position where buyers get some of their power back. But I strongly believe that the sellers are going to hold on to their cards and hold on to those prices because, again, why would they sell for less than what their neighbors sold for unless they are in a financial position where they really need to? That's why I don't think prices are going to drop. Assuming factors stay the same, I don't think there's going to be a market crash. But then again, that is just an opinion. I mean, like, look at what happened over the course of 2 weeks. A war started on the east. Like, we don't know what's going to happen next. So ultimately, it's good to have savings. It's good to minimize debts. It's good to have liquid assets, stocks, things that you can access pretty quickly if needed, but do not keep that money in the savings account because inflation is just eating it up like this. But again, I'm not a financial consultant, so don't, legal disclaimer on that end. That's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The market is shifting and it's going to be really interesting to see because traditionally we've seen the real estate market take some time to shift, anywhere between the fastest we saw it was 3 weeks in 2017, but it really seems like over the course of a weekend, the entire market just shifted. And I mean, gas prices in last week have almost doubled. So it's interesting to see how this is going to play out. And hopefully I'll be able to keep you updated with these videos. So thanks so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.